Hello, everyone. I am Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. I've been here for over 18 years and I never get tired of the beauty. Today, I had Stephen English coming from Austin. He's been a guest on the show before, and my gosh, he brings a wealth of information. We're going to get into that in just a minute. My show is called The Empowered Whistleblower, where I blow the whistle on what works better in the workplace. We want to have a better workplace, and that's why I bring in these guests every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or when you're streaming it, you can hear my show. Stephen, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're listening in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dawn. It's really an honor to be here again.
It is. And, to listeners, one of the most exciting things about working with Stephen is we both graduated from IPEC coaching. He's a coach, he's a leadership coach, he's a facilitator, and he's a speaker. He's been quite busy speaking. And we were talking earlier about leadership training. Is there enough leadership training going on in the workplace? Stephen, what do you say about that?
Yeah, not enough, not enough. And it it was brought to me through the shocking fact, this shocking fact. So the Association for Talent Development, this is a association that studies the learning and development activities at corporations all around the country, maybe even the world. I'm not sure, but I'm only involved in ATD here in the United States. And they found that only 40% of leaders had any development activity whatsoever. That fact to me was so shocking because I was in that other part of that percentage. I was in that 60% that did. However, what I noticed when I looked at it was that when I look back on my career, it was all those skills, the particular skills in the toolbox. So the performance management, the interviewing skills,
Right.
the public speaking skills, the how to run an effective meeting. They were all very much focused on a particular outcome as opposed to the entire leadership cycle. And I never had anything that was really directed at helping me be a better leader at that high level. What I mean by high level is looking at all the phases that a leader goes through in terms of a vision, then creating some alignment, and then finally moving into execution. And so while I was getting little bits and pieces of the skills needed for alignment, the skills needed for execution, the project management training, the actions around, for example, the skills around getting alignment. So difficult conversations, having productive conflict. Those were the like plug and play skills, but they weren't. I wasn't getting the full picture, and so that's what I've been really excited about is being able to do more training in that space. But yeah, overall, I believe that leaders are put in positions based upon their performance as an individual contributor. So number one, especially in engineering, and number two, regardless of whether or not or how they got there, once they get there, there's not enough education for them to be successful leaders.
Gotcha. Now you came from an engineering background. What a change, now to coaching, speaking, facilitating, training. My goodness. When you were a supervisor, did you feel that you had all the leadership skills that would make you successful?
Not at all. Not at all. It was really a trial by fire. It was really, at a best case, it was fail fast, fail forward, in that you would learn a lesson, but sometimes because of the pace, you wouldn't really have a moment to reflect and to identify, hey, what is it that went well? What didn't go well? What can I do differently next time? It was more of just oh, that didn't go so well.
Yeah.
You recognized it didn't work out, but then you didn't really know why it didn't work out and what it is that you can do differently to approach that situation as a supervisor. So yeah, I struggled. I tended more toward the let's just be in harmony, and I didn't address problems quickly enough and often enough and with enough drive. That was my, in my own blameless discernment, if you will, or my own self-judgment, whichever way you want to look at it. I I recognize that that was the area that I had the biggest trouble in. But yeah, I don't believe that the folks who are being put in these positions are armed with enough information. Neither was I.
Well, thanks for being vulnerable and transparent, because I know when I was in the Air Force and I look back, now I'm much older, I've been retired 18 years, and I look back, how would I do things differently? And I think we all grow as we get older and we wish we could go back and change things. So what kind of training can you offer? I mean, what kind of skill sets and tools can you give leaders?
Yeah, I've been up to, let's say, the last month, or well, let me back up. When I was in corporate, I was part of the solution because I was the person teaching things like effective meeting skills and effective presentation skills. So those were two of the skill sets that any leader is going to need. So I had that, and then over time I've added. So once I became my own business entity, I kept things like that, and then I added to it like developing the coaching habit, which I created that course from the Michael Bungay Stanier book, Coaching Habit. And of course, I give all credit to him. It's on the second slide, like, hey, this is all from this book. That's a course that I have delivered. I've also delivered courses on influencing skills. Then I also now, so more recently in the last year, I've started adding things from the Everything DISC and Five Behaviors umbrella. So for the listeners who aren't familiar with DISC, DISC is a behavioral style assessment. It's actually been around since the 20s. It's very well documented, very well researched in terms of its validity and its reliability as an assessment. So people may have heard of things like Myers-Briggs or, you know, yeah, so Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, those types of personality assessments. DISC is in that class. It's just more behavior based. So in the last year, I've added everything DISC and other trainings that are under that umbrella. And I would say they're more workshop-y. So that would be the Five Behaviors of a Cohesive Team, and now Work of Leaders, which is really, really fantastic. I I was aware of it when I first got into Everything DISC, and it was, yet another offering that they had. But then once I really dove in, my eyes have been really, open to it, because as I was mentioning, there are these phases of leadership, creating a vision, building alignment in the organization, and then finally championing execution. And I just did that one on Tuesday, and the feedback was fantastic. So I'm really, really excited to bring more of that out there into the world, because I think that there's a force multiplier. And what I mean by this is that I can help one individual executive, which I've been doing for years now in my coaching practice. However, when I help an entire leadership team, now everybody who reports to those leaders and even their families are impacted, because this leader is now that much more effective. So that's something I've been really excited about.
Awesome. We were talking before this interview, and there's a lot of people out there, Stephen, that are saying they're leadership coaches. What sets you apart? Because you're definitely unique. What sets you apart from other leadership coaches?
Yeah, I ask myself that all the time, because it's really a crowded market, right? Like if you go out to LinkedIn and you type in leadership coach, you're going to have, I mean, I'm just venturing a guess, probably a million search results. And that's just a guess, by the way. So someone might correct me later. I think what really differentiates me is the understanding of what inner leadership is. And the reason why I know that is because I've gone through my own hell. I, I've I think the worst thing somebody could do is look for a leadership coach who has always been successful, who has always gone up and up and up and up, and never had any kind of real setbacks. And I really collected a lot of setbacks. So I think what really differentiates me is, number one, I understand what it means, what inner leadership means, first and foremost. I understand it not in a conceptual way, but in a true experiential way, having hit my head on the wall a few times, bumped into some doorways, and suffered different consequences of big self-leadership, inner leadership problems. I think that's the first thing. And not to go too deep into my story, but I was an alcoholic. I had a lot of trouble in the workplace with relationships. I had a lot of different, let's say, life lessons that
Yeah.
I have bounced back from, that I've tapped into my inner resilience and figured out the way to finally have some inner leadership. So I think that's the first thing that really differentiates me. The second thing that really differentiates me is the environments in which I was a leader. I was a leader in companies like Samsung, companies like Honeywell, companies like, and lesser known, but ST Microelectronics, Cirrus Logic. These companies are, some of them are, Fortune 500. I don't know where Samsung sits, but gosh, talk about in the amount of, the number of employees, the number of sites around the world, dollars revenue, the incredible effectiveness of those operations. That's no accident. The incredible results of these organizations that I've worked in are because of the leadership characteristics that people have that end up in those types of positions. So I think that's really what differentiates me is the environments in which I've led in, and then my own inner leadership.
Awesome. How does self-mastery enter this training that you give leaders?
Yeah, I think I failed to mention it when you were asking me about all the different ones, and to loop back to it,
Yeah.
there, and I was mentioning to you before we even got on the call, is that I believe in standing on the shoulders of giants. I know, from my own place of humility, my own place of honesty, I know that I have my own limitations in terms of what I can create. And so I bring in modalities and frameworks from all over the professional and personal development space. And when it comes to the inner leadership, there's really kind of two things that I look to from my own toolbox. So there's Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. Positive Intelligence is a program that he created that leverages neuroplasticity, performance coaching, positive psychology, and cognitive behavioral psychology, not cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'm not saying I'm a CBT psychotherapist. This program that he made, like I said, it leverages those four, and is just a very, very simple framework to help people identify how they are self-sabotaging. So that's the first one. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of in the moment tool set to deploy, such that when your amygdala is hijacked and you're in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, you can label it, you can identify what is that saboteur persona that's present. And so instead of, so as soon as you can name it, boy, you can create some distance from it. And to say, okay, right now I am having restless thoughts, or right now I am having victim thoughts, or right now I'm having avoider thoughts. I know I'm going a little bit deep in here, so I'm gonna go back up here to 30,000 foot. So I know that, so that program, when it comes to inner leadership, that program is incredibly helpful, and I walk all my clients through that. The other thing that I do for inner leadership is eliminating limiting beliefs, and I leverage something called the Lefko belief process. It was created by Morty Lefko. I won't go into great detail with that. It really helps you identify what was the event that created this limiting belief, what's a new alternative interpretation, and then at a both heart and mind level, at a somatic level, at a feeling level, you release it. You release that old limiting belief. So those are the two that come to mind immediately when I think about inner leadership. So eliminating limiting beliefs, and then also being able to catch yourself when you are self-sabotaging and then have a way out.
Awesome. Really awesome. Because that's something many people suffer from is limiting beliefs. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
we all do. 70% of people have the I'm not good enough limiting belief.
Where does that come from? Just your opinion on that.
It comes from your childhood. It's just that simple. It's a survival strategy. So here's an example. Let's imagine, you're a child and you have parents that do not have that emotional mastery, that are very, let's say, unpredictable in their responses to what's happening, and they fly off the handle, and they have low emotional control, as I mentioned. You can do one of two things as a child. You can either say, gosh, my parents are doing the best they can with what they have, and they're flawed. Or you can say, I'm not good enough. And it's actually safer for us when we're a child to say, there's something wrong with me, than to look up to these people who are taking care of me and go, wow, they are screwed up. So that's how it's a survival strategy.
Yes.
So it's easier to just say, I'm not good enough, and then go back into trusting these people who brought me into the world. So yeah, all of these limiting beliefs, I won't say all of them, let me say not all, the majority of them are from some series of incidents, or a incident, one incident. It could be a very traumatic incident that happened, or it could be a series of incidents that told you that this is true about you, other people, or the world, right? So a limiting belief is something that we believe is true about ourselves, other people, or the world, that somehow keeps us from having success. But yeah, most of them are created in childhood.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Now, who doesn't love a great story? Tell us a story of where you worked with somebody. Well, it could be a company, or it could be an individual, and they transform working with you.
Oh, Lord.
Pick anyone.
I know any one of them. Well, so there was a woman. Let's call her. Let's call her Velma. That's such a rare name. It's easy. So Velma came to me. She was working in an organization where they weren't very open to new ideas. She felt very stifled in her role. She's very high performing. In fact, she had a GSD, getting stuff done, and she didn't use the word S, but they always saw her as a GSD, getting stuff done kind of person. Promoted, but incredibly unhappy in her role, incredibly stressed, and did not have good work-life balance. And at first, that was what she came to me for. She said, I just want to work on my work-life balance. And I said, okay, well, that, fair enough. It's understandable you would want to do that given the environment that you're working in and the pressure that you're under. Mm-hmm. And then there was, when I'm in when I'm in a coaching relationship with people, I'm 100% in their corner. And early on in the relationship, I established, look, text me, email me, I'm here. I want to know what's going on in your world, so that when we come to the next session, I can really meet you where you're at. I don't have to, we don't have to spend so much of the call just, in story time, like, hey, what's happening right now in your world, that we can really get down to the heart of the matter. She texted me one night, and as a recovering alcoholic, as a recovered alcoholic, you can split that term there, splitting hairs there. As a recovered alcoholic, I can smell, and I say smell, I can spot drunk texts. I can spot a drunk text. And I recognized it was a drunk text, and I didn't call her out immediately on it. I continued to ask some questions. Then she ultimately did say, yeah, I've been drinking a lot of wine, blah, blah, blah. And I remember asking her, do you want to change your relationship with alcohol? And that was a tremendous opening. It was a breakthrough for her, because what happened was, at one level, the problem was work-life balance. When we got a lot deeper, it was a symptom of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem, the alcoholism was also a symptom of it. There's a lot of people pleasing. That was really at its core. And that people pleasing came from being an adult child of an alcoholic, being an alcoholic herself. So she had some codependency things going on in her family. And until she could have that inner leadership, that self-mastery, there was no way she was going to be able to solve these other problems. So it very quickly went into almost like recovery coaching. However, I didn't, walk her through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I simply asked her, what options do you have? And AA was the first option she mentioned. She was very hesitant to go, but once she did go, it was like a whole new life for her. So in parallel to helping her address what was happening in her career, we also addressed what was happening for her with this addiction. After some sobriety, she got the personal power. And the reason why this story to me really resonates, because this story is a lot like my story. Once she had that personal power, she could start to take steps. And after that, she simply decided, she made a decision. I have to leave this toxic work environment. I have to leave this work environment that's really, really created from her own people pleasing. Like, she kind of made her own bed, right?
Right.
Because she was so willing to do GSD, get stuff done. She made it unlivable. But then once she had that personal power, she could make a new choice. She ended up finding a new company, working there. Now she's incredibly happy. They have a very different work culture. She's addressed the alcoholism, and her life is transformed. So, that's one example. I have plenty of other ones. And now that I've gotten rolling, right? Like, you got me telling this story, I have more. Yeah, it's such a rewarding, this vocation for me is incredibly rewarding because of how much of a connector, how connected I am to other people, how much I love on other people. I have people who, a year, 2 years after the coaching will send me a WhatsApp and tell me about this great thing that's happening in their career right now and thank me. And that's, wow, it's tremendously rewarding.
That's very powerful, Stephen. Now you're going out to companies and speaking. What are you speaking about?
It's funny you asked me that, because when, I want to say back in March, I started to line up these speaking events in May and June. And it really was, what do you need? And so I've spoken on mental fitness, which is tied directly to the positive intelligence program. I mentioned that with the self-leadership. So I did one on mental fitness. I did another one on embracing change. I did another one on productive conflict. I did another one on resilience. I did another one on then the work of leaders, which I just mentioned, which is this leadership program that is under the Everything Disc umbrella. And then just yesterday, I did two topics. I did team relationship management, which was built out of the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, which is, built from the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And then I also did a eliminating time wasters. So when you say what topics do I speak on,
Covered a lot.
I covered a lot of different territory, right? And I'm really glad you asked me that question, because I'm going to go back to this recording and then write all this down and just inventory for myself. Is so yeah. I given where I'm at, I am very open to what does the organization need? And then I will check in with myself and ask myself, is this something that I can really make a difference with? If I can't make a difference with it, I won't come and speak on it. But these are topics that are near and dear to me. The Embracing Change was a keynote. It was my first keynote. And I'm incredibly, I don't like to use the word proud, but I'm incredibly happy with the fact that I've now touched into that territory. And I'll say this, keynotes are much, much more challenging than workshops and a training class.
Right.
Gotta grab that audience.
Microscope, aren't you?
What's that?
You're really under the microscope.
Yeah, you really are. You're that person. They say, you're kicking off the event. You're in fact, in this event, as it turned out, the dean was supposed to come in and speak. This was at Texas A&M engineering staff. The dean was supposed to come in and kick this whole thing off. And he had another event. He had another thing happen. And so they asked the HR director to come up and make a couple of comments. I don't know if she used his or what they did, but you could sense that the energy was a little shifted in the room, right? Like, hey, this is a big important thing, and the dean couldn't show up. And then all of a sudden it's on me. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Deliver, huh?
Yeah, to really deliver and get the crowd going. So yeah, I've had a pretty wide range, and I'm just so grateful, so grateful to the people in my world, and the universe and God, because there's some things that happen that that even the person who hired me, like the thing I did Tuesday at a company called RRC, it's a renewable resources company. The HR leader who reached out to me, when I said to her, I said, how'd you find me? So I found your website. Okay, well, how'd you find my website? I don't really remember. And I'm thinking, then this must be divine. And she's also a believer, which is amazing. So I really do believe that God stepped in on that one. So yeah, it's been a really amazing journey, and I'm always open to learning. I'm always open to learning from my clients, from the universe, from standing on the shoulders of these different giants. And now it's just about taking more and more action. So I'm really hopeful for the rest of 2023. As you may know, as a business owner, it's sometimes feast and famine, and there are days where the glass is half empty. So I'm in a glass half full kind of moment right now.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing your speaking. My goodness. What is your ideal client, Stephen, as we wrap up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, so it's really it's evolved. It's evolved, kind of like I was mentioning to you before we started the recording. It started out with, I wanted to help men in their midlife transition. And that was a slog. And I don't know if it was because I didn't have my positioning and my messaging down, or if it was just that midlife men don't want to hire coaches. And I don't know. I started out there, then I've been, and if anybody goes to my website and my LinkedIn as of today, they'll see creating impact, helping quiet leaders create impact. I pivoted more toward helping introvert leaders. And that has been good for my business and good for me. Now, where I'm really shifting toward is executives and teams, executives and leadership teams in engineering. So one, the individual, so that executive who wants to work on his inner leadership and outer leadership, as I mentioned, and then also helping teams improve their team performance. This is really where I want to focus right now. And in terms of that ideal client, as mentioned, either engineering or tech. I feel like when I'm in that room, they get me, I get them.
Yes, of course. And we're running out of time. So I want you to get your contact information out to people.
Yeah. So they can find me on my website, www.stephenenglish.net. And I hang out most of the time on LinkedIn. So if you type in on the search bar Stephen English, PCC, professional certified coach, then you'll find me immediately. And I encourage anybody to either follow or connect with me.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Howard.
Thank you for having me, Dawn.